Kamenetzky on Facebook and on Twitter and Periscope. And, of course, the podcast brought to you by DeliciousPizza.com, 2 locations in Los Angeles, West Adams and Hollywood. Andy, this Game 3, Lakers versus Portland, inside the bubble, strangest first half of basketball I think I've ever seen. But in the second half, the Lakers really turned it on. And this was a significant game for the Lakers. Not just that they won, but I think how they won.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they stayed the course during an absolutely miserable first half. They missed 13 free throws. They got to the line 31 times and missed 13 of those free throws. They were 3 of 12 from behind the arc, and they had 12 turnovers. And in part because LeBron really put forth a superhuman effort to keep the thing going, just keeping it from going off the rails. And also, frankly, and we'll get into this, I think Portland just did not cash in enough on an opportunity like this.
You're right. They had chances.
I think Portland, to whatever degree, they truly believe in themselves, like believe in their ability to pull off an upset. They're going to look at tonight as a major missed opportunity. With everything that I named going wrong for the Lakers in the first half, they were only down 4. And then, Brian, they righted the ship and then some. They just controlled the thing.
Yeah, it was really impressive to me. And there's a ton of stuff we want to cover tonight because, I asked before the game, Andy, the 2 things we talked about in our little preview. Rajon Rondo, who really, super Rondo-y thing to do, screw up our little preview that we put out there, didn't end up playing. But the question I asked, when was LeBron going to be scoring LeBron? Like, that guy is important, and the Lakers haven't seen him yet. Really in the first 2 games. The answer to that question was right away. What was going to happen to AD? Where would the secondary ball handling come from? Like, all of that stuff, and it all played out here. And then there was some really cool, entertaining little bits that came with it. Where do you want to start? You want to start on LeBron? You want to start with AD?
You know what? I want to start with AD just because I think this was really important for Anthony Davis in terms of, really showing what he means to this team, what he's capable of, and the way that he's approaching this playoffs, not just on the court, but I think mentally as well, because like we've talked about many times during the playoffs, but also over the course of this season, Anthony Davis has never been in this type of position before. Tonight, he responded from a really rough first half in terms of scoring. He was missing a lot of free throws as well. And then the second half, he started finding a rhythm, really asserting himself, scoring at the rim, scoring from mid-range. And, he took a first half where he at least was setting up other guys. I believe he had 7 assists in that first half. Right. And, or 5 assists in the first half. He
wasn't unproductive. It just was, it was very disjointed, missed free throws. There was, it was just, it wasn't right.
No, it wasn't right. And, this is also coming off a brilliant game too, but after game 1, you're wondering, okay, is he going to be up and down? How is he going to respond to a first half like this where he clearly doesn't have it going? And the second half, Anthony Davis was a big reason that the Lakers just poured it on. And no matter what type of runs Portland had, and they had a few, it was never enough.
It's probably hyperbolic to get to, like, it's the most important at like half of, but as a Laker, in his time here, there will hopefully be many more important 24 minutes worth of basketball that Davis will play. But this felt a little bit like a turning point, like this could go either way kind of moment. How is he going to respond to that first half? And he didn't force it. He got to the line, but the free throws weren't going down. And if he comes back out, even if the Lakers win, and they might have, with him playing kind of a subpar second half, the chirping and the chatter and all that stuff gets louder. Now, he did what stars do, which is come back from mediocre play and do big things. And it was, he hit a couple threes at the beginning of the third quarter. He had a two-man game. I think at one point, didn't they run that same little
they ran
pop action with AC 4 times in a row?
Yes.
With Alex Caruso?
Yes. It was, I believe, 4 times in a row, certainly multiple times. this one, I mean, we'll get into him in a while because
this really was important.
Without question, not just the best game of Alex Caruso's playoff career, you could argue this is the best game of his career.
It's the most he's ever looked like a point guard. Alex Caruso is an actual point guard, not like a guy who can play point guard while LeBron plays point guard.
Or the guy that does the proverbial little things. But staying with AD, just when he plays the way he did in the second half, and LeBron, the totality of LeBron's game, and LeBron actually in the first half had some struggles as well. He had multiple turnovers. He also missed a lot of free throws, but was so dominating getting to the basket. The first half, LeBron had 22 points on 9 shots. Again, missed 5 free throws. Also 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 5 turnovers. But, man, LeBron really was you could argue, the biggest reason that Portland could not cash in on what they should have been building up in that first half. Because the only way Portland can win games against a team like the Lakers is they've got to build up a big lead and put themselves in a position where trading baskets is okay. Like if they can trade baskets, Portland has a chance. If they can't do that, they're simply not good enough defensively. And you also wonder too, without Zach Collins, despite a night where Melo, CJ McCollum, and Dame all played pretty well, if they even have enough offensive firepower.
Yeah, I mean, look, we talked about it, kind of between ourselves at the end of the game, just texting back and forth. Like, Portland looked like they ran out of gas, and it's easy to understand why. They've been playing a short rotation in essentially a string of game 7s for 2.5 weeks. It's not a criticism to be like, oh, Portland's out of gas, they've given up, Dame is weak and all that. No, these guys have been going full tilt for a lot longer than the Lakers have, and so that matters. But you make this point all the time, talking about playoff games, different series. When you are not the better team and the better team leaves the door open for you, you have to go through it. And if you don't, you're entire. And I think to some degree that's what they're talking about tonight on Blazers post-game live streams and all that kind of stuff. Was, oh my God, we had a chance in that first half where I'm just looking at some of these. The Lakers had 12 turnovers in the first half. The Lakers numbers, if you look at their field goal percentages and what LeBron did and all that, they weren't terrible. It was 12 turnovers, and I believe I wrote this down, Andy, correctly. The Lakers missed 193 free throws in the first half. That's correct, right? It's 193.
It sure felt that way,
right?
I mean, and especially when you're watching and this was really from the beginning, the first few minutes, you're seeing Anthony Davis, who is a career, I believe, mid-80s, and has been he's excellent. I mean, you expect this to a certain degree from LeBron, because if there's really been one Achilles, a consistent Achilles heel or Achilles to LeBron's game, he's never been as good at the line as you would think somebody of his stature would be.
LeBron said it himself after game 1. You're used to seeing me miss free throws. You're not used to seeing AD do it.
Right. And seeing AD do it to this extreme, I mean, that you start watching that going uh-oh, what's about to be set up here? What's this about to look like?
Yeah, you're right. And, I felt a little in this game like I did after game 1, where you look at it and you're like, oh my God, they did everything wrong. And we went over those numbers, Andy, after game 1. And then the next day you see more stuff from ESPN Stats and Info, and behind the different analytics sites, and cleaning the glass guys, and all this stuff is parts of the offense you didn't even know existed were terrible in game 1. I felt a little bit like that after in this one. It's God, they're not going to miss that many free throws again. Davis isn't going to score 6 points in the second half again. And, Lillard and McCollum, who were just incredible in the first half, probably slow down a little bit maybe in the second. And the Lakers are still right there in that game. I felt very confident in the second half, but you don't know. And the way they came out in the third quarter I think, to me, it was the first time since they got into the bubble that as a group, not just, LeBron looked good or AD looked good, but as a group, they looked like a team that rightly should be a finals favorite. I don't think they looked, even the Denver game, parts of the Utah game, the Clipper game, there were a lot of mitigating factors in that. I don't think they looked like that until the third quarter tonight.
Yeah, this was the best the Lakers have looked, certainly since entering the bubble. Yeah, I mean, it's the best they've looked since that weekend against the Bucks and the Clippers. That weekend where it felt like the Lakers had really established themselves as the team to beat in the NBA. Like, when you get superstar performances from LeBron and Anthony Davis like they did, but then, KCP, who, a few very KCP, what the bleep is going on?
Casey, what I figured out about KCP during this game? You know what he looks like? He is in a world where everyone moves at regular speed. KCP is one of those baseball players from old timey films. He's always like moving, like everyone else is moving regular. And KCP is just regular. He's moving like a 2x speed in a 1x world.
Well, it's what it's like. You know how all the footage we see of Babe Ruth running, like his legs are like this, really,
right? That's old timey baseball.
Him in particular, like if anybody wants an example of this, just like look for Babe Ruth. Because maybe he just was faster than everyone else because he was such an amazing athlete.
But even like when they're just playing catch, it's like, like, hi, they wave. Yeah. Like Walter Johnson, here we go. And sometimes the results, like the first half, are awful. And you're just like, and so by the way, the synergy on our tweeting game tonight was we were very much thinking the same things. I think we had like 4 simultaneous tweets about the same people. But KCP was doing some terrible things in the first half, wildly out of control. Then he comes back in the second half, hits 3 in the third quarter, three pointers, or was it 2 in the third quarter? But the defense was there, and he finished a couple. He had that dunk, and all this stuff. Like, just when you want to, he's a great guy, so it's not like I'm rooting for him to play, but like just when you're ready to be like, okay, they need to sit him down and leave him there, he redeems himself in ways that are just amazing. The swings with KCP are wider, I think, than any player in the NBA.
I mean, let me tell you something. People used to complain about Lamar Odom being inconsistent. You folks had no idea, Laker fans, what you were about to step into with the KCP experience. Like, Lamar Odom looks like Tim Duncan compared to KCP. I mean, and I say this as somebody who thinks Odom got picked on a little bit too much for that. But, there's no question that occasionally you watch Lamar going like, what's going on, man? And you're not going to find a bigger Lamar Odom fan than me.
No.
But there'd be times you're just like, dude, like, what's going on in your head, man? Like, but compared
to KCP, Lamar was, you're right, he's Tim Duncan. I mean, it's amazing. But
you have that, and then you've got,
let us down a rabbit hole there, but KCP took us down the rabbit hole.
Right, KCP took us down the rabbit hole, as is often part of the KCP experience. Danny Green, more solid, only 8 points, but he was more efficient. Like he had some good, he had that one sequence down the stretch where he had 2 blocks on one.
Well, you saw his value. You saw his value defensively,
and then
definitely
Alex Caruso, 10 points, 7 assists. Only 2 turnovers, a block, 3 of 5 from the field. And like we talked about, in that second half, running a legit 2-man game with Anthony Davis, all those things we're talking about in the second half, like you mentioned, that's what makes you feel like the Lakers really are capable of pouring it on just about any team in the league.
Right. I asked Frank Vogel after the game, like because this was like we said earlier, the point guardiest game I've ever seen Alex Caruso play, like where he looks like a point guard like this. And on a night, I think, I'm not saying AC did it any differently, but it's just, there's an irony to it being on the night that Rondo was supposed to come back. And we've talked a lot about, why the Lakers might need Rajon Rondo, despite the fact that you don't want to need him in that way, just because there is not a lot of secondary playmaking on this team. for Caruso to come out and really lead and orchestrate the offense for big chunks, particularly of the second half.
Better than he's done his entire career.
Right. And he'll tell you, and he said after the game, these are not complicated reads. It's pick and pop stuff that point guards can do and whatever. And I thought he was trying to do some of that in the first half and was pressing a little bit. But in the second half, the rhythm, kind of locked into the right rhythm. Vogel said after the game, because I asked him about it, what does that do? Like, when you have a guy on the floor with LeBron who can do that, and he talked about it makes LeBron, puts him off the ball. And now, not only is he not working as hard, which is a benefit to your team, when LeBron isn't, you think LeBron draws attention when he's on the ball, he does, but he also draws tremendous attention when he's not. And so, you're defending, you're trying to, figure out where, so it opens up the floor in so many different ways that, and also if Caruso can do this on a nightly basis, it limits the amount you actually need to use Rondo. And you can use him much more strategically, or deploy him, or not at all if you don't need to.
No, not at all.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
He almost becomes like JaVale McGee, where you can put him in the positions where he is most likely to succeed, and you get the best value, and you don't have to try to squeeze 25 minutes out of him. You can do 12 and maybe get the best 12 out of Rondo.
Well, and it's really worth noting this too with Caruso, because Rajon Rondo was supposed to be active tonight. He ended up having
that's what I'm saying.
Right, but like the idea that you can do this, I feel like with Caruso, it's not just like the idea that you have to put Rondo on the floor, but it also allows for different combinations with Rondo out there. It prevents you from having to rely too much on Rondo himself if he's going to end up being out there. It perhaps allows Caruso to work as more of an off-ball guy or whatever, so you're not tempted for whatever reason to put J.R. Smith on the floor like Frank Vogel did tonight.
Yeah, that was actually a question, Andy, that came through in the chat from Brazil 3. TF JR doing out there? I think we all know what TF means. My answer to that is a shrug emoji. I don't know. I hope it doesn't happen again. It may not.
It was interesting to see this just because JR got minutes and Dion Waiters didn't. And, I would not have been surprised, and I think I speak for you as well, if neither of them really played at all, because I don't think either one of them really made a strong case for themselves in the bubble, 4 minutes
God,
to be
no.
a part of
Dion, but Dion more than JR. And that's why people are surprised.
That's what I was going to say. If one of them was going to end up getting minutes, I would have thought it would have been Dion Waiters. And I tweeted this out at Cam Brothers during the game. JR's minutes all came alongside LeBron. They were only alongside LeBron. So maybe Frank Vogel's thinking is, with LeBron out there, he's going to be handling the overwhelming majority of playmaking anyway. So J.R. Smith becomes a theoretical floor spacer, ignoring the fact that the guy hasn't hit a shot since, I'm not even joking, 2018.
Yes.
Like, this is not, that's not hyperbole. Like, he really has not hit shots consistently since then, because he's basically been out of the league that
long.
Well,
Andy, I think how many field goals does he have? Like, you're almost true in the most literal sense. He hasn't hit a shot since 2018. I mean, and I feel bad. Like we can all, as goofy as JR's career has been, and it's been that, it has. And he's had a great NBA career. The guy, came into the league as a high school player.
Sure. No,
and he's still doing it at 30, whatever.
And
he's had a great career. He shouldn't be on the floor anymore.
Right. He played a legitimate role in LeBron getting that championship in 2016. But that being said, do you know what what JR is shooting?
In the bubble? Playoffs and...
Do you know what he's shooting from behind the arc in the bubble?
0.
Nope. Don't come on, put some respect on his name. He's shooting 9%.
9%.
For the regular
What's he
season.
shooting overall, though?
Overall, I mean, it's hard to do the math.
I think he got like two buckets.
In the postseason, it's in the low 30s. The regular season in the bubble, he shot 9%.
That's not good.
He's not. frankly, I don't think he's any more of a floor spacer than Dion at this point.
No.
I don't suspect we will be seeing much more of JR, whether Rondo comes back or not.
Yeah, I think that's certainly the hope.
And there's been a couple times now that he's actually gotten on the floor before Dion, and I don't know what the rationale is, but I do know that it's not justifiable.
Like it is not. It is not. I agree with you. And it'll be.
We don't criticize Vogel often, but I
will say this: there are not a ton of great options. I thought Kyle Kuzma played a really active first half. He was cutting very well. He was one of the few guys who didn't sort of seem sort of stilted or stuck in the mud or whatever it is. The Lakers were efforting in the first half. Everything was off. They had 12 turnovers. They were missing free throws. They were failing in weird ways that threw off the rhythm of everything that they were trying to do. But the defense overall, for all that damage that Dame and McCollum did in the first half, the numbers for Portland weren't great. They shot the lights out from 3-point range. They were under 40% in the first half.
Yeah.
So, Markieff Morris isn't doing a ton. They're not getting a lot of stuff out of a lot of people. So I think maybe if you're Vogel, you're thinking in this series, we're good enough to win. Even if I try to steal minutes for these guys and see if I can get them out there and see if they can be contributors and all that kind of stuff as we go on. May not be able to do that. I may need them against Houston, and I may need them against the Clippers. I got to try to give it. That's probably, I think, the rationale is that we're good enough to win anyway. But I just don't know what you're expecting J.R. Smith to give you. I would rather see them run their experimental minutes with Dion.
Yes.
With the caveat that I haven't gone back to look. I haven't read a lot of, I don't know like the rotational things and like lineups but they're interchangeable enough. But anyway.
Well, I mean, look, honestly, I would run with Quinn Cook before I'd run with JR because at least Quinn is a better shooter at this stage of his career. If you're looking at shooting,
but then you're talking about like if you want a wing guy versus a point guard.
Sure,
that's all I'm saying.
Whatever. I mean, JR as far as the way he's going to match up as a wing versus Quinn Cook, who is really
against
shooting guard
against
and a
Dame.
point guard.
You got to put him on Dame or McCall. I'm just thinking, Andy. I'm thinking aloud. All I'm trying to do is I'm thinking out loud. That's it.
But I mean, I don't think the extra, 4 or 5 inches of length that JR has over Quinn.
Okay, D Harmon 1986 on the Periscope chat has an interesting theory here. I think J.R. Smith's decision making is considered more reliable than Dion. I don't know if that's true or not true, but my God, is that a fascinating question to be able to ask the coach.
What? I would have bought into that theory were it not for game 2 and that wild ass hook shot that JR put up in the lane. Like
Frank Vogel didn't like that. He did not like that one bit.
You could get that from Dion.
You understand, but like that,
you could just as easily get that.
That is a question. The question that D. Harmon asks is one that would probably break Twitter. Like if we put that on a poll, I think we will. Who do you think the coaching staff considers more reliable in their decision making, J.R. Smith or Dion?
I think at Cam Brothers, that's going to be a question.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about LeBron here for a minute because I do want to get to there was some stuff in the third quarter. With LeBron and Melo, that just as a basketball fan was really entertaining. LeBron and Melo, before we get into LeBron's game specifically, in the third quarter, Melo had, was it 16? 13. Melo had 13. LeBron came out and hit a couple threes. Those guys were going back and forth. That's 71 years old, like running back and forth up and down the court. Combine their ages, they're 71 years old, Andy, which makes them just a couple years less, younger than you.
I know.
And,
I know.
And to think that guys could be doing that at your age is really impressive.
Well, half of my age.
Half of your age.
Half of my age.
I don't want to give them too much credit, but like,
right. I mean,
that was legitimately fun. Like that moment where those guys were doing that in Melo. I like watching Melo play well.
You know, I mean, I've always had a soft spot for Melo. As much as when the Lakers, several years ago, were trying to put him and Kobe on the same team, I thought that was insanity and wasn't going to work at all. And Kobe and Melo were extremely close. And they ultimately decided that it wasn't going to work. And, like the years where the Lakers were really chasing Melo during a period where he very clearly was having difficulties adjusting to where he was in his career and what was being asked of him from these different teams. Like, those were rough, especially as somebody who's always appreciated Melo. And in the interactions I've had with him, I've always found him really cool.
And absolutely. He's like I said, remarkably well loved around the league.
I'm really happy for him in this situation with Portland because it's worked out so well with a team that needed him, that has a culture that's instilled with Damian Lillard, where I think Melo understands I can't pull any crap. Like I whatever things that I was doing that didn't work in Oklahoma City, didn't work down the stretch with the Knicks, Houston, whatever. I can't do that here. And I think he's really embraced where he's at and the role.
Yeah.
And it's worked out great. And it's for a fan base that, like Laker fans will hate hearing this. The Blazers have an awesome fan base. It's the truth.
Of course.
If you've ever gone to a game in Portland, it's amazing. It's amazing. And this has been really fun to watch as somebody who loves basketball and, again, has always had this soft spot for Melo. Even acknowledging at times he could be his own worst enemy.
Okay, here's an interesting question that was just put up, like a comment. Because the Lakers have been short on wing guys, secondary scoring, all that kind of stuff all year. There was talk, so much talk, like the summer's worth of talk that the Lakers should have picked up Carmelo Anthony, or the Lakers were going to pick up Carmelo Anthony. And I 1,000% was against the idea of picking up Carmelo Anthony.
Was I.
Should they have picked up Carmelo Anthony? Like, if they got this guy, and now you don't know if the context always matters, but this Carmelo Anthony would have helped this team. It's an interesting, but it's a fascinating question because so much has happened since that. Like, that feels like 2,000 years ago because everything does. Like, they'd be better off with Melo, right?
Yeah, I mean, they would, but it is important to remember contextually, Melo began playing the 4 more than 3, where he really started finding this groove with Portland. And that wasn't going to be available for him with the Lakers. And, had he have joined this team, I think he would have began at the outset playing the 3 where, before he became skinny Melo, that was going to be a problem defensively. And this team has been so good on that side of the ball and really carved out such an identity there. I don't know if it's quite as good a fit this year, but right. I will say this, with Melo having gone through this experience and really, I think, understanding the joy and the value that can come from being at this stage of his career, if he doesn't re-sign with Portland, maybe it's a move that works out very well for the Lakers.
Right. Where, again, because he almost can play like kind of an Iggy role where he play 15, 18 very minutes a night, but all the way through. Because he is not a great defender, and he's never been a great defender.
He had some good moments tonight, I will say that.
He's working, but he's trying. Like, he's working on, like, if you're playing with Anthony Davis and LeBron James and you get 17 to 22 playoff minutes a night, Melo, like this guy, like, he's gonna work, like, he's gonna do the stuff, and he's not gonna freelance, and he's gonna be where he's supposed to be. It's just, I had almost forgotten that, like, oh wow, like, that was one of the options out there for the Lakers. And he was picked up reasonably early by Portland because they had so many injuries early in the year. He wasn't available when the Lakers were really looking for players later in the year. It would have had to be something that happened really before the season or very early in it. So I understand why it didn't happen, but it is interesting to think about what he would look like on this team.
I don't blame the Lakers for not doing
it. I don't either. I really don't either.
I mean, look, you look at what they did with Dwight. It's not like they were unafraid to go there. You know what I mean? Like in terms of, taking that type of chance. It's not like they were afraid.
It's not like, you're right. And it didn't make tons of sense at the time. Like there were a million reasons not to do it. Like I got all of it. And like he's played much better this year, I think, than people thought that he would. But it's just a fun hypothetical. And in terms of a locker room guy, would have been great. I don't think there's any question about that. All right, so let's finish up here with LeBron, because as I mentioned at the top of the show, I had asked the question in our preview, like, when do we see scoring LeBron? Because as great as he was in game one, he didn't put up a lot of points. The triple double was it 17 assists and 16 rebounds, whatever it was, one way or the other. Game two didn't have to score and didn't. And they ran away with that one anyway. But we were waiting for that dominant offensive performance. And in the first half of game three on Saturday, not only was he was scoring when the Lakers badly needed him to be a guy, not just a facilitator, not just a guy who gets Anthony Davis going and all that kind of stuff, but a dude who puts the ball in the bucket because the Lakers couldn't do it otherwise. He carried them offensively in the first half and really set up what they were able to do in the second. He had 22 in the first half, I think it was. And like, he answered the question really quickly. The answer is tonight you're going to see LeBron is scoring LeBron.
Yeah. I mean, he
I guess there was no question there. It was just me making a statement. But
yeah,
I apologize for that. It's not really, we're having a conversation. I'm not interviewing you. But
that's true.
Still, my next guest is Andy Kamenetzky, the host of this show.
Will you take my answer off air?
Right. I mean, I apologize for both not asking you a question, and I don't apologize for not asking you a question because I'm not interviewing you, damn it.
You know what I thought was interesting? Frank Vogel after the game said that LeBron was playing to contact, and that was noticeable to me just because I've talked a lot about in the bubble and a little bit before that, and certainly in the playoffs, LeBron's issues finishing at the rim, and that it's had me concerned. And you wonder if LeBron made more of an effort tonight, and I'd have to rewatch some of these to try to, I guess, eyeball relative strength, the relative willingness to.
I got it all up here, Andy. You just asked me a question. It's all up in the old
seventh possession, second quarter.
The one with the pin down.
Yeah,
LeBron can do that, by the way. I can't.
Yeah, I know. I really should ask LeBron. It's just
he'll tell you.
It's difficult in these Zooms to get a question to him, but the idea of whether LeBron was more successful tonight as a finisher, because he was far better in game three than he was in game one or two, or frankly, than he's been in the bubble, if he made more of a point to actually absorb contact as opposed to maybe not playing into it quite as much and that altering what he was doing as much as anything else. I don't know, but I thought it was interesting the way Frank Vogel pointed that out, because whether he was doing anything different or it just worked better tonight, there's no question that LeBron was really, really playing physically in this game.
Yeah. And, playing downhill and just there are always moments where, and I'm not going all Skip Bayless here, but there are always moments where LeBron has the choice to make the pass or not force a shot, but choose himself as the option, perhaps.
You mean when he's not being a chicken shit?
Correct. When
he's not scared of the moment.
Right. Overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
No, Skip, by the way, was picking on LeBron for mean mugging in the Portland. Shut up.
Sometimes, I don't know. Every now and then, I kind of feel like LeBron can't win with Skip, but it's probably just me.
I don't know. I'm waiting. I think there'll be a time when he can win him over. It's very genuine. It's very genuine.
I don't feel like in any way this has become Skip's shtick.
No, absolutely not. It's all very genuine.
It feels like legit basketball analysis.
Yes, totally. but like, I think he sensed what was going on. And to say LeBron's got a great feel for what's happening on the floor is stupid to say out loud because it's such an understatement. But
we'll leave it to Skip.
I think you could feel AD was like KCP was going too fast. Like, they had that turnover at the beginning, and I actually put this one on LeBron where he had the ball in the corner and he hadn't used his dribble and he threw it to JaVale, who had put his head down and was starting up the floor, and kind of looked at him like, the hell are you giving me the ball for? You're the guy. All I'm going to do is literally give it back to you. And I think LeBron maybe didn't realize that he hadn't used his dribble. Every once in a while, LeBron gets those brain cramps. But
not often, but it happens.
Not often, it happens. Like he had that. He had that thing. Like he didn't dribble or something. He just came in bounds. Like weird stuff. Period.
He didn't own him. Remember, Lamar did that a couple times.
Exactly. And so altogether, though, it was what I liked about this game and what made it so fascinating to me was it was the first one, like we talked about at the top, that hit the formula. LeBron goes 38, 12, and 8 with 2 steals. AD picks up with a very strong second half and finishes 11 of 18, 29, 11, 8 with 2 steals and 3 blocks. And if he had hit a free throw, he'd have had 33, 34 points. And 2 superstars, 1 or 2 other guys who contribute and play good defense, and they run away from a good Portland team. And so, we talked about, how much did they get to the formula in game 2. And in some ways they kind of did play good defense, hit a couple shots and all that. Game 3 was the formula. Shoot well enough from the perimeter, which they did. 33%, which for them is good enough from 3, 50% overall. If they could hit a free throw, they would have won this game by 15. And they stopped turning the ball over in the second half. They had 12 at halftime, finished with 17. This was the template, and the first time they looked like a championship team to me.
Well, I mean, we talked before
in the bubble.
Well, yeah, we talked before, Brian, about it's thrown around, it's a cliche, but playoff LeBron. Mm-hmm. And as great as LeBron played in certain aspects of game 1, where he had like really a historic triple-double in terms of the specific numbers that he put up. These are very, very rare numbers. But he had those issues finishing, and there were some issues offensively with LeBron and a few too many turnovers, where I was like, that to me, it's a great game, but it's not truly playoff LeBron. And especially if you're going to have certain expectations of Anthony Davis justifiably playing like a superstar, and you're going to put that on LeBron, on Anthony Davis, that has to be playoff AD, then you have to expect the whole thing from playoff LeBron as well.
Absolutely. No, I agree.
And, and in the first half, he had a few too many turnovers, missed some free throws, but by and large, this was playoff LeBron.
Absolutely.
This was a playoff LeBron game, and this was playoff Anthony Davis.
All right, so let's look forward a little bit to game 4. That's the one that comes
really quick, 3. By the way, because I don't think we've mentioned it. The podcast brought to you by.
Oh, we did it at the top, but we should do it again.
The Delicious Pizza. They've got 2 locations in LA, West Adams area, Hollywood off Sunset. You can order online, or you can just go right there, give your order in person, wait to pick it up, and use the password CamBrothers, 20% off. It is awesome pizza, local business, and you are supporting a massive Laker fan in Michael Ross. I guarantee he is every bit as excited by this win as anybody watching this show or listening to this show right now. So again, Delicious Pizza. Go there. Awesome food. Support a Laker fan.
So let's look a little bit at game 4 on Monday.
Monday. Yep.
Monday. Time, flat circle. It's this is, I think, one of those times like, okay, do they go from here and kind of build on what happened tonight, and you see 4 quarters of, or 3 quarters of, okay, that's the team that they're supposed to be. That's the group that was Vegas odds to win. I mean, the formula is not that complicated. We've seen that the defense is going to be consistently solid. It was tonight. They're going to be able to continue to put a lot of pressure on Dame and a lot of pressure on McCollum. Tonight in the first half, particularly, those guys really responded and overcame some pretty decent defense. But by the end of it, they started to look like they were out of gas. So you have this team that might finally be running out of energy and is definitely overmatched overall. Can you start to roll them in ways? Do you give them the first quarter like they did tonight, or do you get out ahead and actually win a game kind of from start to finish like they did, in game 2? So that's kind of what I'm looking for. That kind of consistency, from an X's and O's and do things differently. I'm curious, does Dion get moments? Do they let AC continue to run available the same way? Is Rondo available? Do they lean on AC to do the same kind of stuff that he did tonight? Little things like that. But my big thing, I just want to see if they can carry the mentality, because it's been hard for them to generate. Frank Vogel even talked about before the game, even coaching in this environment is different. Like, you don't have those natural cues for a team to get hyped up. Like tonight, they're at Moda Center. The hostile crowd's going to be there. LeBron elevates for stuff like that. You don't have that. So, I mean, the coach, everything about it is different. And so that's what I'm looking for on Monday.
You know what? This just occurred to me in terms of something that I'm wondering if there's any type of carryover, and it's one of those things where you really end up playing armchair psychiatrist. But tomorrow would have been.
I'm glad you brought this up.
Tomorrow would have been Kobe's 42nd birthday, and Frank Vogel was asked before the game if, or either before or after.
It was after.
It was after if the team had been planning on doing anything special for that day in remembrance of Kobe, and Frank said that it would be kept internal, but you got a very strong sense.
Yeah, there were reports that they're going to wear the Kobe jersey, the snakeskin, print Mamba jersey.
Right.
Monday, I think.
Right. You get a very strong sense the answer is yes, and frankly, it would be shocking if they didn't. But between, that being on their minds tomorrow, what would have been Kobe's birthday, and then the game being played on August 24th, 8/24, which is Kobe Day anyway. The emotions of all of that, I'm curious to see if we see anything that feels like it's being fueled, by Kobe and that memory and really wanting to do right by him in this game and in the series. And obviously these are things that you're going to be reading into, whether it feels positive or negative in the sense of putting too much on themselves. But I am going to be curious to see if there's anything that feels like signs of that.
Well, I have thought all year long, this idea of, or not all year, but you understand what I mean, since the crash, that making this season about winning for Kobe, playing for Kobe, fulfilling that kind of play, playing with that kind of, like, all of those things where you project, that his memory, whatever it is, onto your personal games, the joy, the motivation, whatever it is unfair. And I don't think it's particularly healthy. If a player wants to draw inspiration from that, that's one thing. To create kind of a narrative, to kind of create this sort of framework around winning for Kobe.
When you say that really quickly, do you mean us doing it is unfair, like media fans, or do you mean them doing it to themselves?
I think media and fans, I don't think they'll do it to themselves in any way that is internal, unless it feels like they're made to. Like it, where you are told
I actually don't know.
Where I think if you're told so many times, like, you got to go win this for Kobe, you got to, all that kind of stuff. Like, LA needs you to do this for Kobe. Like you have to fulfill this thing. There's so much that comes from what it takes to get from point A to point B in a title that needs to come internally. And if guys draw inspiration from Kobe internally, like, something that they learned, their relationship, whatever it might be, that I think is great and healthy, and it can be a source of strength for players or whatever. If it comes out of obligation, out of a feeling that if you don't do something, you're going to let Kobe down, you're going to let LA down, you're going to let the memory down, or something like that, that's where I think it can become unfair and difficult, because trying to do something like this in that context, to me, seems it seems very difficult and very taxing.
I understand what you're saying, and I don't necessarily disagree, but I also don't think there's really a difference. I mean, ultimately, if that is something that is fueling, I remember both of us wrote about this for The Athletic. In my case, I think a couple of times, like how, that type of burden, whether you're talking about for the organization or whether you're talking about for LeBron specifically, because, becoming the face of the organization, after Kobe, the challenge of doing that is something we used to talk about, forget after Kobe retired. We used to talk about this while Kobe was active. The idea,
oh God, yeah, absolutely.
The shadow that Kobe cast over this organization and, through merit, through earning it. Kobe earned every single bit of juice that he had within that organization and the exaltations, but it doesn't change the fact that this was going to be something difficult for the organization anyway, much less within this type of context. But I feel like if that's something that that these players and the organization feel, in a lot of ways, the impetus for it doesn't matter. Whether it's external or whether they're putting it on themselves, it's the same thing.
I don't know. I mean, we can go around and around. I feel like, feeling
you can say that it's unfair of fans to put that on them,
to feel like you're letting down Kobe.
But I think it does
in the spirit of Kobe by not winning a title this year. That's BS.
I'm not saying that they should feel that way. What I am saying is, if they do feel that way, ultimately that's something feel whether fans are putting it out there or not. I think they likely feel that way themselves.
They might, and if they feel that way themselves because that's how they feel, I think that can be you can turn that into a fuel and a motivation. What you don't want it to become is a burden. I think that's basically kind of what I'm getting at, where it becomes one more thing that you're carrying around that you don't necessarily want to, but you're carrying it because you feel like you have to carry it, not because it's something that lifts you. That's the difference. It could be a lifting factor. It could be a burden.
It could be,
and it's probably different for different guys.
I certainly hope that it's a lifting factor, but the truth is, I think it's what all these guys were going to feel, regardless.
It could be.
I think it is so difficult for them not to feel that way, even if you feel like, frankly, it's unfair to themselves. To put that on themselves.
Yeah, I think it's completely unfair.
But
to do it to yourself.
I get a very strong sense that that's how they feel about it, regardless.
All right, so we'll be back after Monday's game. I actually will be on with Sedano after the game.
Yeah,
doing his playoff party. Very cool of George to invite us. Andy was on after game 2. I will be on after game 4. George takes weekends off, apparently. Lazy Sedano. Come on, man. The real pros, Andy, they work every game.
Yes. Ignoring their family.
I think George can take the weekend off.
Yeah.
Delicious pizza, 2 locations, West Adams and in Hollywood. Great pizza. Tell them Cam Brothers, whether you go to deliciouspizza.com, you phone the order in, or you're picking it up. However you're doing it, deliciouspizza.com. Cam Brothers gets 20% off. Really good food, really good pizza. Fun game.
Yeah.
Lakers win. What was the final? 116. I don't think we ever said the final. 116-108. If you're here, you probably know, I feel. And we'll do this again on Monday, right?
Yeah,
that's the plan?
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, very good. Thanks so much, everybody, for stopping by.
Thanks, everyone.
And see you Monday.